Joining me now is our great Election Day panel, Jake Sherman, co-founder of Punchbowl News and an NBC News political contributor, Symone Sanders, host of Symone on MSNBC and former advisor to Vice President Harris, and Doug Heye, Republican strategist and former RNC communications director. Thanks to all of you for being here. I'm excited about this panel. Jake, let me start with you in Wyoming. You've obviously watched Congresswoman Liz Cheney on the January 6th committee, and this is being characterized as her last stand. What are you watching for today, not in terms just of this race, but in terms of her political future?
Well, it seems as if the race is over. I mean, based on the last two public polls, so we don't have to wonder much about that. But I'll be curious, obviously, to hear her concession speech or defeat speech, whatever you'd like to call it. Because I think it'll lay the groundwork for whatever she's thinking about next. I mean, I don't know whether she could run for president in a meaningful way. I'm not sure the Republican Party is anywhere in the same universe as her. I'd say definitively they're not. So I'm curious to hear what she says tonight in this. It must be the most watched concession defeat speech that we've seen in a long time.
Doug, what are you?
Was that a shot at me?
Well, what are you expecting to hear from her? And do you think she could have a real shot at a potential run, or potentially at least peeling off some voters away from former President Trump if he does throw his hat into the 2024
I think to Jake's point, the sign that this race has been over electorally isn't just the last two polls, it's the last two commercials. Yeah. The one that features her, the one that features her father. She doesn't say, and go out and vote on Tuesday. She's talking about a much longer fight. So it will be a concession speech. It's nice to see Republicans admit defeat when they lose. But she's going to talk about the future, and that future will start, not just tonight, but it'll start with the first hearings that we have in September with the January 6th committee. And that will be the beginning of whatever that next chapter is. We just don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think all eyes are going to be focused on what happens in September with the next January 6th committee hearing. Symone, weigh in here, not just in terms of what we're watching in Wyoming, but also Alaska, where you have this ranked choice voting system, which in its own right is a headline, right? Because there's so much controversy around this. I won't say that, but tell me why. What are you watching for as it relates to Alaska? Obviously, you have Sarah Palin. You obviously have Lisa Murkowski fighting to hold on to her Senate seat.
Look, I think the Sarah Palin piece of this is very interesting. Sarah Palin, who I think many of us wrote off as something of the past, and she has come back in a real way, and she really has an opportunity here to inject herself right back in the middle of national politics if she emerges successful out of this race. I think ranked choice voting, look, we have talked about this at midterm after midterm, presidential election after presidential. When we're talking about primaries, we're looking at Maine. Maine made a move like this a couple years ago, and it is confusing to the voters. I think the question on the table is, how can you make sure the process is open enough so that no one's rights are being trampled on, that there truly is free and fair access to the ballot box? And I don't know if we've gotten there in Alaska.
Well, the thing that's looming over all of these races tonight and into the future, of course, is former President Trump. And now we have this search at Mar-a-Lago. Jake, I've been talking to a number of Republicans who say actually what it's doing is it's galvanizing Republicans who had left, all but abandoned former President Trump. Now they're angry and they're now ready to support him again. Are you hearing that? What do you think the political implications are?
I tend to think, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I tend to think that, yes, I think it's galvanized his supporters, but I think the middle of the country, Democrats and Republicans who voted for him in 2016 and gave him the presidency, people who said, listen, this guy is abnormal, he's unusual, he is something new, we're going to give him a chance. I just can't imagine those voters giving him a chance in 2024. I just think that is where his support erodes just because of the constant noise, the constant drama. I just have to think that people don't like that.
Doug, is he right?
One thing, he is. And more to that is one thing I keep telling Republicans is when you immediately step out to defend Donald Trump when there's some kind of bad news, and this is, chapter 750 of this, what we always see consistently is 2 or 3 days later, there's oh, wait, we didn't know about that part of it. So that's when we heard the word nuclear last week. And there will be more to come. So their initial instinct is to defend Trump. and then they go quiet for a little bit because there's more bad news and there'll be more to come.
It rarely gets better with Trump. That is what one Republican said to me recently. It's rarely like less than what it seems like at the beginning.
Symone, give us the reality check on how Democrats are viewing this, because President Biden was ready for his victory lap. He started it today at the White House. He signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law. He and his top officials are going to be out on the campaign trail. They wanted to have the headlines to themselves.
Yes,
and now they're contending with Trump.
They wanted to, I mean, now we're having conversations about how does the White House break through, right? Mm-hmm. Because the headlines are
how does
Donald
the White
Trump.
House break through?
Exactly.
What is that?
How do they?
Look, I think the White House needs to
they?
continue to do what they have been doing. I talked to Jamie Harrison, the chair of the Democratic National Committee, the other day, and he gave a very forceful defense, if you will, of the Biden-Harris agenda and what Democrats have gotten accomplished. I think you heard the president give a shot across the bow in his remarks today, talking about, there are those that basically wanted to be detractors, and those of us who focused on the work, that's how we make life change for the American people. I do think that there is a responsibility on Democrats to do not take the shiny object. There is nothing to be helped by talking about this investigation from Merrick Garland. Let Merrick Garland do his work. The White House needs to focus on selling this agenda and explaining to people that no, 87,000 IRS agents are not coming for you middle-class Americans.
The wild card is if Trump announces he's running in the middle of the primaries. I mean, does that hurt Republicans even more?
Yeah, I think it does, in part because, Jake was talking about those voters who gave him a chance the first time and are exhausted. And part of what they're exhausted with isn't just all things Trump. It's inflation. It's rising crime. It's the images they see at the border, which is what Republicans should be wanting to talk about. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But the more Donald Trump dominates headlines, even over the expense of the White House, it means Republicans can't talk about what they should be talking about.
Can I make a point here, though? Because I think that Donald Trump has never actually faced a criminal proceeding. All of these cases, when we talk about his legal issues, it's been civil proceedings, and his tactics have worked there. It is very different when you start talking about criminal proceedings. And we know there's a DOJ criminal investigation, the Fulton County DA criminal investigation into January 6th. And then you've got Tish James in New York, criminal investigation into the Trump Organization.
Yet it certainly adds a whole new layer. I want to go to my colleague and pause this conversation very briefly. Shaq Brewster, NBC News correspondent, who is out in Brooklyn for us. And you, Shaq, are tracking a really fascinating twist to the midterms from outside of the world of politics. Tell us what you're watching. You have these exclusive details.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this morning we learned from the NBA that when they release their schedule tomorrow, it will show no games are scheduled to be played on Election Day. Beyond that, they're going to have all 30 teams compete on the day before Election Day, and they're encouraging their fans, their players, and vendors to participate in what they're calling a civic engagement night. And look, officials at the NBA say that this is about going beyond what we saw in 2020, where you saw many arenas like the one behind me turned into voting locations, some for Election Day voting, others for absentee ballot processing. They're still trying to work on that for this time around, but at this point they're trying to control the schedule and encourage as many fans as possible to take the midterm elections as seriously as they took the presidential elections. And in my conversation with the executive director of the league's Social Justice Coalition, one thing that I asked him is this a symbolic move? And he leaned into it, saying yes, it's symbolic, but the symbolism has power. Listen to this.
Jake, I'll come out to you.
So valuable about the NBA community stepping into this space is that we have a platform unlike any other. If we do something that some might call a symbol, I would say that's a good symbol. If we were talking about getting out, registering, voting, making your voice heard in whatever way you think is most important, those are symbols that I think most people can and would support.
Folks who follow the NBA extremely closely say this is an unprecedented move, but point out that it's not unfamiliar territory for the NBA. We've seen them lean into political discussions repeatedly. We know that they've endorsed specific policy measures like the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, for example. But one thing that you've always heard from the NBA, they point out, is that it's not just about the policy, but it's about, in order to get that policy enacted, you need to show up at the voting booth. And that's part of the messaging that you're hearing from the league as they make this announcement, Kristen.
Well, great exclusive details. Shaq Brewster, thanks for bringing that to us. Really appreciate it. Jake Sherman, so just respond, if you would. The question that Shaq put there, is this symbolic? Do you think this could ultimately prove to be a symbolic move, or will it have a real impact?
It should have an impact. I mean, if more people are able to go out and vote and more people are encouraged to vote, I mean, our voter participation in midterms is disgustingly low. I mean, it's just embarrassing as a democracy. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but we should have more people vote. I mean, this is serious. And what we've seen in the Obama era, the Biden era, and to some extent the Trump era, is that Congress is a much more influential institution than most people think it is, as somebody who's covered Congress for a long time would say. And if you want your policies to be enacted, you need a Congress that's going to do it. So, and if you want Biden's policies to fail, you want Republicans in power, you should go out and vote for them.
Well, and one moment where we saw larger turnout than we expected was in Kansas, when voters turned out to vote for a single issue, abortion rights. Is that going to be something that is really motivating?
I think it could be motivating, but the difference between the midterm elections in November and the special we saw in Kansas was that people were going out to vote against, to defeat a ballot initiative. There are not a number of ballot initiatives on the docket, if you will, when it comes down to this November. And so folks will be going out to vote for candidates, to vote for an agenda, which is why Democrats mobilizing around the president's agenda is going to be key, I think, to continue to motivate people to come out in November, to put them in power, let them keep the House.
Doug, weigh in on this. What do you think are going to be these motivating factors? I mean, obviously, Shaq had this great reporting about the NBA canceling its game, but you wonder how much of an impact that will have nationwide.
Right. And let me say, logistically, as a sports fan, I'm more impacted by the game the night before that goes past midnight than I am at the game that starts at 9 p.m. after the polls close. Whether it's baseball, football, basketball, whatever.
Pick a different day. I hear you.
But clearly, the activism of players,
the
activism of players has increased exponentially over the past 5 years, and even going back when you had some activist players, but very few. And clearly, the NBA feels this is a smart direction and a profitable one ultimately to go into.
Yeah, and I think that when you think about tonight, that will be one of the things that we're tracking. The turnout. I mean, how many people? This is a race in Wyoming. I end on where we started, where this is all that Trump's been talking about, Liz Cheney. She has been his top target.
The top target. I mean, out of all the folks who voted to impeach the president, a number have retired. Many of them lost their races, and Liz Cheney is like one of the last folks standing. And so I think it is a foregone conclusion. What happens next? Is she going to run for president? Is she going to help foil the presidency? We don't know, but we'll be watching.
All right, we will. This is such a great conversation. Thank you all for being here. Jake, Symone, and Doug. Really appreciate it.